Now we are directly coming to AWS. See, classification of AWS infrastructure component. This is something which you need to know because you need to know how actually cloud is distributed and is built by AWS, because at the end of the day, all will have physical resources, right? Now, how do they manage to ensure that availability and scalability is not going to be a challenge? How they manage or they prefer adopting a pattern so that disaster recovery can be facilitated. So AWS did what? It said that, see, we are having our data centers where we are keeping our hardwares. We are going to distribute our assets across multiple regions. So you have globe at different locations of world. They have created regions. So if you see, within a country itself, they may have multiple regions, US East, US West, and others. Now, these are the regions where actually they will keep their hardware, appliances, storage, network appliances, and everything, right? Every region will have multiple availability zone. So what they did, they selected a region, say California, and they distributed their data center in 3 different places within that region. And these are called as availability zones. Now, where will be your asset? Your asset will be in a region, in a particular availability zone, or across multiple availability zones, so that in case if data center at one availability zone is down, other availability zone takes care of the need. So entire world is divided into multiple regions, and every region will have availability zone. It's like you have a country, you have state, and states will have multiple different cities, right? So this is how actually they have distributed their hardware to take care of all the different risks which may arise. So what all are the typical components of infrastructure? So now we are aware about availability zone, we are aware about region. What are these two? Edge locations and regional edge caches. So we'll see this, but understand that these are the 4 different distributions of or classification of infrastructure components when it comes to AWS. Now this may be different for other cloud providers. So now let me tell you, region we know. Region is divided into multiple availability zones. Now, what about edge location? It is always better that any user get access to the services which is located nearest to that user. And that's what is called as edge location. So edge location is where end user accesses services located at AWS. So there are certain edge services like CDN and others, right? IoT and others, which actually facilitates in faster and better service that AWS can provide. And see, you may have multiple edge locations. What is this regional cache? For every region, it maintains a cache, dynamic cache. That is what is, regional S cache. Right. So you need to understand that when I'm talking about how AWS is built by distributing its hardware across multiple regions, where every region will have availability zone, and AWS has also considered, edge locations and regional edge caches in order to ensure that data or services which are being provided to the user are near to the user for locality purpose. That's the reason why they came up with this particular concept. Now, very briefly, availability zone as a data center. What is availability zone now? It's a facility. Multiple servers, switches, load balancers, firewalls are kept. Now, some people get confused that will availability zone means only one data center? No. Availability zone can be several data center, but they need to be close to each other. When they are close to each other, they are counted as one availability zone. For example, assume that I'm talking about availability zone as Chennai. Now, when I say Chennai, availability zone is Chennai, but data center may be located across multiple different places in Chennai. All put together is what is part of one availability zone. So don't get confused. Nothing for you to do anything here. You are just trying to understand how actually AWS has distributed its assets. What is region? Now, region is geographical area. Each region consists of 2 or more availability zones. A region is collection of data centers which are completely isolated from other regions. Why? So that in case if one region gets flooded or there is earthquake or some natural calamity, other region is still there if you have distributed your services across multiple regions. Availability zones are connected through redundant and isolated metro fibers, right? So if you see, this is the region where you have multiple availability zone. In every availability zones, you can have multiple different data centers, and these availability zones are connected to each other using fibers. Now comes, okay, what is edge location? I told data locality is important. I should be served from the nearest possible location. And that's where AWS came up with edge locations. Now, these are endpoints for AWS used for caching content. Edge locations typically serve services like CloudFront, CDN, and others. Currently, as part of AWS, by 2022, January, there were over 150 edge locations. Don't consider edge location as a region, but it is just a small location that AWS has, mainly located in most of the major cities to distribute content. For example, some user accesses your website from Singapore, then this request would be redirected to the edge location, which is closest to Singapore, where cache data can be read. So this is for improvising or making services better from perspective of throughput. Now, what is regional edge cache? See, in November 2016, AWS came up with something called as edge location. Now, what is this edge location? Smartly, what they did is they said that, see, why do everyone every time need to hit to the original server? There will be original server. First time you are hitting, you will get content from there. But next time when you will hit, again, why I need to go to the original one, right? Why can't I maintain regional cache? So that's where regional cache came into play, where it decreased further hit to your origin servers. Now, a regional cache has large cache than an individual edge location. Data is removed from the cache depending on the expiry that you will set. When the user requests the data is no longer available at the edge location. Therefore, the edge location retrieves the cache data from the regional edge cache instead of origin server that has high latency. So this is something which they did in order to improve again the throughput, the availability, the user experience of retrieving data. For you, what is important? You need to just know that there are 4 different components which are used by AWS, so facilitates its infrastructure, applying best practices with primary objective of serving user from the nearest possible location. Okay, why serving user from the nearest possible location? Because it will be fast. Data has to travel less. Utilization of bandwidth will be better. Latency will be managed. So these are the reasons why AWS did it.